Fake news, it's not been a consistent definition of what fake news is. This has gradually evolved. So if we go back 15, 20 years, fake news was something contrived. For example, satire, these talk shows, something like this. From about 5 years ago, this changed the definition of fake news to be something that is deceptive or manipulative in nature. So, for example, so-called Russian fake news. This is to influence or manipulate public perception and opinion. But now the current definition of fake news has come to more generally denote something which does not concur with one's worldview. A good example of this is Donald Trump when he accuses CNN of being fake news. So this is about more the role, the expected and the real role of mass media and journalism in society. So this is something which has changed, because if we look at the original concept of this fourth estate role of media, the whole thing revolved around the idea and the approach that media or journalists should tell the facts and only the facts and let the audience decide. But if we look at the current state of mass media, and this is including mainstream media, this has come to be more interpretive journalism. So immediately the facts and only the facts become an interpretation of the facts. And this is usually along political or some kind of subjective lines. And it's no longer about letting the audience decide, but manipulating the audience perception and opinion by persuading them of a certain reality. The second question, who delivers fake news? It's widely delivered, because now no longer do mainstream journalism and mass media have the monopoly on delivering mass communication, public communication. That has been lost. They are definitely, one can see this fake news issue going through them on a daily basis. This is not related to any one single country, but is a more generalizable observation. One can also see this occurring on social media, for example. The results are different. The fake news it has a purpose and an intention behind it. This is not just for the sake of it. For example, the fake news could be dealing with something like giving advantage to a particular political candidate so they have an advantage in an election. It could be creating an advantage, commercial advantage for a particular company, or a whole number of different things. It can be just, for example, creating a moral panic. For example, these can also be put together and combined. One particular story from Latvia was that there was a small internet portal which published a very small article about Swedbank being in financial trouble. And this caused a massive run on Swedbank funds based on fake news, because people didn't check it up. It created a panic, but it also affected Swedbank in terms of its economic viability. So different reasons, different outcomes, also different medium which carry this. It can also be carried intentionally or unintentionally when media cover a certain person and believe them to be credible, but in fact they are not credible. There are numerous cases of this. The consequences. Well, the consequences are pretty obvious, and this comes at a time when there is already a crisis of trust in public institutions such as mass media journalism and the politicians. And this doesn't do them any good. So, for example, public trust in media is plummeting even further, and this will of course have economic effects in terms of advertising, but also the sales of the copies of newspapers and so forth. For example, public trust in media in Italy is something like, when asked the question, do you trust mass media? 19% said they trust media. In Sweden, the country which is built on trust and conformity, it's about 60%, which I think is extremely low, and this will continue as long as there's interpretive journalism and fake news. The same goes for the political system, which is why you're having the crisis of liberal democracy at the moment. People do not trust the system because the system has acted in a way which is not trustworthy. So that's my answer for 3. Okay, so what's to be done to increase trust? I think that's a very difficult problem, but this is a process, and I think the process involves education, for example, that people need to be educated how to consume knowledge and information, because not all knowledge and information is reliable, and they need to be given the tools, the cognitive tools to be able to figure out what is reliable and what is not reliable. And this needs to be done in a very objective way, because fake news doesn't come from just one single source aimed at, for example, eroding democracy or some strange concepts like that. It comes from different interest groups. And I think there are, interestingly, an increasing number of media watchdogs, and I think this is a consequence of this fake news by mainstream journalism and mass media. So you have things like Media Lens, Fairness and Accuracy in Reporting, and other different such bodies which are created by people, the so-called fifth estate. So these are the ones checking the fourth estate, and you can see that the fourth estate is not happy at being checked and balanced, because they still hold this kind of brand or this kind of thinking of their own inherent ethical superiority, which the public do no longer believe in. So I think this is a difficult thing to judge. There needs to be a change in the thinking of journalism and mass media and politicians. There needs to be training and awareness of the public and how and where and why they consume knowledge and information. And there needs to be some mechanisms of accountability and transparency, such as what is being done by those kinds of media and fact checkers.